Well, welcome back, everybody. It's good to see that you can't get enough of me, right? So, the original American classic, A True Hero. We are like Captain Kirk. This seems like our 5-year mission to identify, classify, and discover the universe called project management. Okay, let's begin. This lesson is really about key terms. The last one was a good overview. Those are things you need to know to grasp this going forward. We will continue to build on it. And these are the key terms that are part of it. It's just good to be exposed up front as we start off. So here we go. The business documents, right? These are developed by the C-suite. That's a CEO, CIO, COO, CFO, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Executive Officer, etc. You're not normally part of that as a project manager. Now, this is done before you're assigned, but if you are lucky enough to be asked to attend, by all means do so. Get in there, take notes about requirements, who likes the project, who doesn't like the project, who didn't advocate for it, what their needs are, how powerful they are. Gold mine of information. But if you're not, you would ask for the business case, which is going to describe the need of the project, and the benefits management plan. Those are the benefits the company expects you to provide through this project that they've selected. Now, I wanted to clarify the charter versus a team charter. So the charter is your process. That's 4.1. Once the business documents are done, bam, you should be assigned formally, and you will start by developing the project charter. Your output will be the project charter. This is a high-level document signed off by your sponsor, and it does a couple of things. It formally recognizes your project, and it gives you, the project manager, authority to use resources, right? So you notice on the right-hand side, you are aligning the business case and the benefits management plan, and you're narrowing it down to a formal document called the project charter. And you'll use that charter next to develop the project plan and produce deliverables. That's different than the team charter, which is something the team sits down together and it establishes team values. You make agreements between each other, how you will hold each other accountable, discipline each other, support each other, that you will respond, for example, within a set amount of time to emails and things of that nature, right? Okay, so these are the kind of the things you want to address in your team charter, which is different than the formal project charter, which is high level. Now, in doing this, you will develop the charter, which will then be an input to developing the project management plan. And that project management plan is going to produce a bunch of management plans. So, what's a management plan, you ask me? I'll tell you, since you asked. This is a formal, approved document that defines the overall plan for how something will be executed, monitored, and controlled. Although a management plan can be lengthy, it doesn't have to be, right? It has to meet your needs. It has to establish goals for all the processes in it. So if it's the scope management plan, it will develop goals and objectives and a roadmap for collecting requirements, for doing the controlling the requirements, etc. And it's how we articulate the current status. Through all of this, we progressively elaborate, right? So progressive elaboration is this iterative process. We built this detailed project plan, but we will learn things along the way, and that's progressive elaboration. In a nutshell, it's right here, continuously improving and detailing the plan as more information becomes available, right? And so it allows the team to define the work and to manage it to a greater level of detail as the project evolves. Bottom line, project managers build a detailed plan, but our project is unique by definition. The definition of a project is its unique deliverables, right? And so a unique and time bound. Unique deliverables and time bound on its length. It'll have a start and end date. And so because it's unique, we expect changes. So we progressively elaborate. Now, as we progressively elaborate, we will do so partly based on changes. So we need data. So we have work performance data. The key word there is raw, and this is collected during the executing process group. Your process 4.3, direct and manage project work, if you look on page 25 of the PMBOK guide, this is where you are collecting the data. Then you will develop work performance information. That's that same data, but now it's analyzed. You see the relationships. And at times you will produce work performance reports. The key word there is compiled, which generate executive summary with key issues and recommended actions, right? So work performance data is raw. Work performance information is analyzed. And that's only during the control process. And then reports we can do during executing and control. Okay. So there are 3 influences on any project. We call them EEFs, OPAs, and organizational systems. And EEF is enterprise environmental factors. And you'll see it here on the left. They can be external to the company or internal in the company. But they are outside the project, no matter what. But even though they're outside the project and you don't have control over them, they will impact your project. So you want to be aware of them. OPAs are internal to the project, and you can use processes, policies, and procedures is one type. The other is corporate knowledge base, or sometimes called organizational knowledge base. Those are your lessons learned, your historical documents, your configuration management approach. And these influence a project. Well, so do organizational systems, which include power, influence, interests, competencies. This is the politics of the world. So I put it in a little acronym called CLIP, where it's competence, leadership, influence, power, and politics. And you as a project manager are balancing all of that in this organizational system. I equate it to like fire. You know, you can't have a fire unless you have oxygen, fuel, and a heat source, right? Then you have fire. Well, you are playing with fire through CLIP. So be careful. It's an influence on your project. Here's a summary slide on EEFs. I mentioned these are items outside the project, but not under your control, but they influence your project. They can be internal or external. Please review the slide at your leisure. Pause now. Then there's OPAs. These are organizational process assets, right? Why reinvent the wheel, right? We already have company policies, procedures, and processes. Let's use them, right? And even update them. That's why I highlighted the word asset in red up above. We want to make sure that we can update them as we learn a new process or apply a new policy to make our project work. And then, of course, I mentioned corporate or organizational knowledge base with some examples there. Okay. We have one last slide on organizational systems. It's the same information as before, but notice I break down from the PMBOK guide what an organizational system factors are, including, the synergy you're trying to generate, the management elements, how dynamic it is, etc. Read this slide, and there's more in the PMBOK guide on organizational systems, a term to be aware of. So is the requirements traceability matrix. Oftentimes I will just call this RTM. And what I'm doing, what the PMBOK guide is guiding us to do, is it ties the strategy of the project, which from the business case and the charter, through this document called RTM, it links to RTM, this requirements traceability matrix, to our project objectives. So the strategy and objectives are linked through this one document. I'm going to list all of my project requirements. And notice I'm even under requirements reference, I'm going to reference. So some stakeholder can't just come up and say, here's a requirement. Well, what is your reason for that? And that would be the requirements reference. And I'm even going to tie it back to the business documents to state the business need as an example. Okay. In addition to the requirements traceability matrix, the same output from the process called collect requirements. You can see that on page 25 in the planning process group. The other output in collect requirements is, in addition to the requirements traceability matrix, the requirements management plan. And this is how requirement activities will be planned, tracked, and reported, right? And so it's the necessary information that will effectively manage the project requirements, right? And it's conducted amongst all the stakeholders to ensure that the requirements are captured, even training requirements, even transition of your product deliverable requirements, etc. Now, the communications management plan is one of those subsidiary plans we talked about. It's another management plan, which we addressed earlier in this key terms conversation. But the communications management plan, I love it because it's not about a cell phone list and an email contact list, right? It is about, notice at the bottom of the page, creation, collection, storage, retrieval, and use and disposition of information. That is the definition of the communications, of managed communications. So it's about taking that work performance data, turning it into work performance analysis, and developing these work performance reports. That's largely what I'm going to manage. So I would surmise that an output of managed communications might be these work or an input, a work performance reports. I expect to see that in the conversation because it's about how do I share that information in a strategic kind of tight format with issues and recommendations. It's about creating, collecting, storing, retrieving, using, and disposing of information, a definition right from the PMBOK guide. So stakeholder management, I always tie communications and stakeholders together. In PMBOK Guide version 4, they were part of the same chapter, and they largely didn't add new information. They largely are brought together. And when I see a COM question on the exam, I think stakeholders. Don't get too far from it. When I see a stakeholder question, I want to think COM, communications also, right? They're still tied in my mind because they're synonymous, they're integrated, they're synced. You'll see that when we talk the knowledge areas. So stakeholder management, we're back to management again. These are the processes that identify the people, groups, or organizations that can be impacted or impact your project, either in a positive or negative way. You want to analyze their expectations and develop a strategy to engage them. So you can see why if you were invited to the C-suite conversations to develop a business case, you would want to, because you would get a whole bunch of information that this very definition of stakeholder management is talking about. So a stakeholder defined specifically is an individual, group, or organization who is affected by a decision in the project. That's the summary in red. The whole definition is the red and blue together. You can read it. Same with identify stakeholders. My summary definition is in red, but the whole definition is there for your review. So to identify stakeholders, I want to identify them regularly. I want to analyze information regarding them that impact project success. That's what I'm trying to do and identify stakeholders. And notice in this iron triangle, we talked the schedule baseline, cost baseline, and scope baseline. Collectively, these are called the performance measurement baseline when you talk to them about them all at once. But I'm getting them from the stakeholders. Stakeholders are central to them. And I'm making trade-offs to meet the project needs, which are largely stakeholder expectations. Okay, we'll come back in a few minutes and finish up key terms and then get underway. Thanks.